Regular meeting of the local planning agency for August. Could I have a roll call, please? We'll start with you.
Sam Kincaid.
Susan Moss.
Melissa Ozemic.
Ton Win.
Mary Albright.
Steve Coates.
Glenda Glover.
James McPherson. And we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Over in the corner.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second. Can't remember, I believe it had Glenda glasses. I know, I'm looking.
And a motion to approve
one
the,
second.
sorry.
There we go.
Jumping ahead. Motion carries. And approval of the minutes.
So moved. Second.
All right, motion carries. Any public comments? Nothing heard. Moving on.
So since City Council directed the city attorney to draft these two ordinances, I get to present them to you today. And he got to redline my work and get it back to me. So, but this is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fort Walton Beach, Florida, amending section 1.08.02 of the Land Development Code to add a definition for bus stop and a definition for public transit stop, amending Chapter 2 zoning districts and uses of the Land Development Code to add public transit stop and remove terminals, bus, transit, includes truck stop, as permitted uses in both commercial general and commerce and technology park zoning districts, and providing for an effective date. This is a quasi-legislative hearing, and I'll be both presenting it too. And so the purpose behind this ordinance is City Council wanted to crack down on the proliferation of bus stops in the city, because the old bus stop that was on Perry for over 50 years, it closed down. I believe it was back in 2019 or around that time is what my memo had in there. Yeah, February 28th, 2019. And then what they did was they moved it out to a Shell station on the very western edge of town, and without getting anything permitted by the city or anything, and they did that. And that's kind of indicative of what they've been doing nationally, though, because a European conglomerate bought Greyhound, and I believe their competitor as well, and they've been shutting down their bus stops across the entire country and doing the exact same thing in big cities. They did it in Pensacola recently. There was an article about it in Pensacola. It's creating a real problem because little gas stations are not set up, first off, just and common sense wise, to handle buses coming into them and people staying there. But there's another ordinance that won't be going before you all that's for safety, and they actually don't meet the safety standards too that the federal statutes have in place for bus stops to have, which they have to meet in order to have a bus stop. And so it's kind of led to this problem that that really across the country we're trying to stop it here in Fort Walton. And so what this ordinance will do, if you pass this, it'll change the permitted uses in the list of permitted uses in the city to not allow any basic commercial bus stops. You'll still have public bus stops, school bus stops. You'll still be allowed to have, if you want to hire I guess what they call a charter bus, if you have like a church group, a school group, that can still come in town, stop at a school, stop in a parking lot. That will not be a prohibited use either. The only types of bus stops that will be prohibited, if this does pass, will be commercial bus stops, which is defined in the statute. And so that's really the point of the ordinance. I'm here to ask any questions that you have.
Gambling?
That's basically a charter bus service, those gambling bus services. They come to, I don't know exactly where they stop around here, but they don't, that's,
Stop in the Piggly Wiggly shop.
they're typically hired by the gambling services. I've seen them at some of the churches before, not like picking up people in the evenings and stuff, in the larger parking lots and Walmarts and stuff. But this will not, if if the council wants to come back and prevent those two, I'm sure they could, but this is really just aimed at the public transit, or not public transit, but the intercity transit, commercial transit service, which is Greyhound, really.
We don't want to provide that for anyone, is what they don't want to do.
If not in their current business model, the way they're operating, they're not operating for the benefit of either the passengers or the public currently, from what it's appearing.
So are you kind of forcing their hand to establish a facility?
I don't think they will, but I'm sure that would change the attitude nationally about the whole situation. Because even in the bigger cities, where it's much more common to use public transit, they're shutting down their bigger stations too and moving outside, and it's causing a problem too. And I think it's probably, you can probably see the whole business model going by the wayside within a couple decades. Just is my guess. Probably.
You mean no Greyhound then?
No Greyhound or any other service, I think, eventually.
Oh.
If I can provide some context maybe on this, because I've done a lot of research on it and working with Jeff over the years and stuff. So some of the problem comes into just the way that they're being handled now. Most of them are moving towards convenience stores, gas stations seems to be kind of one of the ones, but there's even other ones out there, really just a place where they can stop. The problem comes into those, though, that a lot of these places do not allow their customers to come in and use the restroom. They don't have any water available to them. There's no shaded area. There's no seating. There's just no infrastructure there for them. It's basically, some places are just a blank parking lot. Now, the one in the city is a Shell station, but this is the problem that's going everywhere, is they're just going into these places. There's been, like you said, in Pensacola, there was a news article that came out about a month ago for what they did there, and none of the local transient stops go to where that bus stop is now. So people are coming in on the bus and they're stranded miles and miles away from any other public transportation. And they're stranded there, the stores are closed in the evenings, so the bus comes in, drops them off at 10 o'clock at night in this dark, unlit parking lot of a closed store, and people are stranded there. And that's the concern around this, is that that's what this is moving towards.
And the federal standard that I was mentioning earlier, the old bus stop that used to be on Perry, which was actually a dedicated building for that purpose, it was always open anytime there were folks being dropped off or picked up. It always had to have a certain amount of bathrooms, water, at a minimum provide some water, and they could provide concessions. Obviously, a gas station will have probably better concessions than that place actually had, but they aren't going to offer free water necessarily. And they'll have the same 2 bathrooms that they've always had. They won't have more bathrooms, which what you would need in a situation like this. And so it's kind of, I won't say it's unsanitary, because you can go to the Shell station. I don't think it's an unsanitary condition there right now, but it's creating more of the safety issue that Tim just brought up, that people can get dropped off at any time. It's not really located in an area where people want to get dropped off either.
Well, there's people that can't afford an airplane ticket or a train. So the Greyhound company is not caring that they're going to lose their business or their customer because they won't buy a building and house them? Do they rent from Shell space?
No one's quite sure what the current, has anyone spoken to them yet?
We haven't spoken to them directly on what their arrangement is now. In discussions with the property owners in the past, they've been talking about putting other things there because they're going to be losing revenue from the Greyhound usage there, because they're going to be reducing the number of stops. I don't know what the owners, I don't know if it's the Shell company, if it's the property owners. I don't know how that arrangement is set up. There is a monetary thing that basically the Greyhound is paying for usage of that stop.
So if Greyhound were to come in here and acquire a building, does this stop them from doing that?
This would currently, but if they were to do that properly, they would come before and meet with Tim and the land folks. They would probably come in and recommend to the council to maybe revisit this ordinance. But this is to prevent another one from popping up at any gas station here in town or anywhere.
So can we put a clause in there somewhere that says if proper facilities are acquired, then we allow this, and if not, then no? Because I think this is going to be a turnoff for those individuals that want to come to this area. They're going to be like, well, I have no way to get down there now. And I'm speaking specifically for military guys, right? So there are military guys right out of basic training or tech school that, like, I took a Greyhound from Texas to Maine because I couldn't afford a ticket.
Oh my God.
So now, those guys, how are they gonna get to their duty station? You know what I mean? They don't have a way.
And I took a Greyhound back in college. When I first moved down to Gainesville, I took actually a U-Haul. A friend and I drove it down there, moved it in, and then we actually took the Greyhound back to get our vehicles. But yeah, so I mean, it does provide a service when you need it. So
I'm just wondering if we put a clause or something in there that says, hey, you have to have a dedicated Greyhound building, and we'll allow that, but we won't allow you to piggyback off of another business like the
Yeah.
Shell station.
If it were to come down to something like that, and that's something that they were looking at, that's like Jeff was saying, is we would just revisit this with city council at that point, because right now, there's no standards of what we would require for that building. So it would have to be a discussion on there, probably a lot of back and forth, working with our city attorney, maybe even workshopping it with city council to figure, what do we want to require for this? Right now, it doesn't seem like there's an appetite for any of these companies to invest in that kind of thing, certainly not for such a small market that we're gonna have here. I mean, the few that are remaining are in your major metropolitan cities. So,
and a lot of the big cities bring that up. If you read articles, are considering buying them themselves and still maintaining them, and because Greyhound actually does own some of them in the bigger cities, and one of the things they're doing is they're trying to divest all their real estate to across the country. And so some of the bigger cities are like, well, if we buy it and give you favorable terms on lease, will you stay, centrally located? I know that too. But they got bought by one of these type of companies that'll sit there and milk it, sell the assets off over a course of time, and they're not raising the level of service at all from what it appears currently.
What's the, I don't understand why if they're getting into a contract with the convenience store, why is the convenience store letting them use the restrooms? And I mean, I got the water part, but the restrooms, you'd think you'd be able to use the restrooms. You just made a contract with me to come in and park in your parking lot. Why wouldn't I be able to use your restroom?
It's the number of restrooms. Like at a dedicated site, you can have more than just the two. And I haven't been in that Shell station since I played football for Long Beach High School. I remember they were small back then.
Which Shell station is it?
It's the one right there on 98.
98 and Wright Parkway.
Right Parkway.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
No, it's actually, is it right? Yeah, it's Wright Parkway, right? It's right at the very edge of town where Mary Esther city limits are. So.
You talk about revisiting, but Jeff just said, this is not in their plan.
Yeah.
This is not in their plan for the city. So that's probably going to be turned down.
It does seem a little bit of a shame to we're basically cutting off or making it impossible, basically cutting off a service that we know that some people are, they're using, and our citizens, like, I know several military people too that have come in and out on Greyhounds. And so it does seem a shame to exit out. I do understand all the reasonings. I get that they're not going to come up with a building, but is there anything else that we could do, other ways to, but if they are going to use it, that they have to have,
That would be changing other provisions of the land use code to just design standards and things like that. And council's directive was to kind of act quickly on this as opposed to doing that route. Now, if they do hear comments like this, because we are going to bring these up to council, that y'all share concerns about, all of y'all shared stories about either people using Greyhound or personally using Greyhound. And I think a lot of that same sentiment will be shared with them at the time. But I think they want something that kind of quickly right now, and so that's why they're going this route or preferring this route, because this will just remove the use completely for any future bus stops. The existing one will still be allowed to remain, but we'll be talking about that in the next ordinance too.
Remain for, 6 months or a year?
And we'll talk about that in the next ordinance, because this one just gets rid of the permitted use. But I'll be answering your question directly here in about a few minutes. So.
Okay.
Well, I move that we follow what the planning and zoning people have presented to us. I mean, Is there any reason for any more discussion?
I agree. I think, I second.
Okay.
Okay. And so that's a motion to approve?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And he second.
I second.
Public comment. Oh, yeah, public.
Oh, public comments? Public comments, anybody?
I think it's sad.
Well, I do too. Not that I want to get on one. Never, never, never.
See what's in store for the next thing here then.
All right, motion carries six.
Well, this
Well, but the
This won't be any
problem
happier,
was,
so
the
that's-
problem was,
They voted
he
against
didn't tell us, so we already voted. If we had known what's coming down the pipe,
Yeah, but you can't
then
do
we would do that.
And so this next ordinance, let me read it by title.
It did not pass unanimous. I think that needs
What
to
was
be
the
noted.
total? It was
Yeah,
5.
62.
62,
Yeah,
okay.
sorry.
The next ordinance is ordinance 2153, an ordinance of the city of Fort Walton Beach, Florida, amending section 6.0600 of the Land Development Code to add section 6.0601 titled Definitions, amending section 6.0600 of the Land Development Code to add a section 6.0602 titled Commercial Bus Stops prohibited within city limits, prohibiting the use of land for commercial bus stops within the city limits of Fort Walton Beach, Florida immediately, providing an amortization period for any existing commercial bus stops, and extinguishing the grandfathering of commercial bus stops as a non-conforming use after September 10th, 2025, providing a method for affected parties to seek limited relief from the use prohibition established by this ordinance, repealing all ordinances in conflict, providing for codification, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. And this is a public hearing. And kind of building off the last hearing we just had, and answering your question immediately, if this ordinance passes, if the council passes this ordinance, then any bus stop, which there's one currently in town, will have to close down by September 10th, 2025, which will be exactly 1 year from the proposed second reading of this ordinance before the council. There is a procedure included in here that will allow any party that comes before the council, and there's a procedure spelled out how for them to do that, to ask for more time. So if they've invested a large sum of money, then they can get more than 1 year. And the best example of this type of process, which I don't think I personally, I don't favor this process. I don't think Tim even does either. It's called amortization. It's where you remove grandfathering uses because it's always kind of risky. But when you have a commercial use like this, there is case law that does support doing this to remove grandfathered uses. And the best example I can think of is Panama City Beach back in 2014. They passed an ordinance doing the exact same thing to remove scooter rentals because those were plaguing the entire city. The initial round failed. It got up to the first ECA. They overturned it and said you did not provide them basically an appeal process to come before the council and show and establish a value of their land to ask for more time. And out there, I believe they initially gave them 3 years, just a blanket 3 years. That got overturned. And then they came back and gave them another 3 years. And then maybe 5 years, I forget exactly what it was. But then they did have a couple parties utilize their process and got a couple additional years. But from what I've heard, there's no more scooter rental businesses now in Panama City. It went up on appeal the second time around. It did pass, or it was affirmed, not overturned. And what we've done is basically model this ordinance exactly off of that Panama City ordinance. So we know at least it would pass legal muster, but so it's really going to be more of a public policy decision of y'all and the council as to what you want to do.
But even though it would or wouldn't pass here, the council will still look.
They'll still look at it.
They're gonna still do it anyway, yeah.
They may or may not. Y'all brought very good points today.
I mean, I couldn't believe that I had to pick a customer up at the bus stop and I didn't know where it was. I had to be told. And he bought a piece of property. So there are people that do not have vehicles and
Yeah.
cars.
And Ms. Kagate, I encourage you to go to the council meeting too. Well, I will bring up, you brought that up, that
I think we're governing ourselves to want to be the yuppie, live in, walk around, live here, eat here, play here. Don't let anybody come in that isn't, of that type of mold. And I hate to see us do that. I really do. I feel we were a good mix of people and we had fun things, but now we're kind of sitting ourselves on a concrete, this is what you want, this is what you like. And I just, it's not a comfortable atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, the thing though that I resent is the bus company itself not caring enough about their customer.
I agree with you, Glenda.
And so that right there tells me they don't want to have a business.
Well, I feel
But
more
there
sorry
are
for the
people, I know a little old lady that she never drove, and she came here on the Greyhound bus, and that's the way she's always traveled, unless she was with family. So, I mean, there are people that use Greyhound bus station, or buses, but the company itself is evidently wanting to go out of business.
They're no longer an American company.
Yeah.
They were bought by a venture capital firm overseas.
Yeah, because if there was a way for us to say we would have the terminal, if it was an effective, efficient terminal with investment, with facilities that worked, then I think we're fine with that. But the way it's modeled and running, it's not effective and useful, and that's because the way you're saying the business, they sold off all their assets and they're basically running it into the ground, so they don't want to have a business.
I think we're deterring additional, in my opinion, we're deterring future Greyhound company likes to come into Fort Walton by passing the last one and then passing this one.
And I've ridden one before too. I know what you're talking about when they stop at every little town along the way. So I know. And Tim, do you have any? Because I know Chief Page will add some additional stuff at the council meeting because he has a lot of opinions on this. But do you have any idea of the volume of complaints that the city has received about the Shell station stuff?
I haven't specifically talked to him about the volume of the complaints. I know there has been some concerns
I completely get
from
that.
people being dropped off and stuff. And
Get the information.
yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, I was 13 when I last rode a Greyhound, so that's like 7-ish years ago, or so. But part of the problem in there too is I remember traveling then, and I would take to the bus, 7 stops to this one location. Then I would get off there, and then an hour later another bus would come on, and then we get on that bus that's going north, and then you stop. That's part of it. It's not that I don't believe that the city council is like, oh, we don't want your kind here. It's the service that's being provided there is not a service that's appropriate. Is my understanding of where council's kind of coming from on this one, is because it is a matter of, I mean, if you've traveled before, you do have those stops and you do have to wait for a while. It's just inappropriate. I mean, with our heat and stuff in the middle of the summer, I mean, if you've ever driven by there, you will see at times people just sitting out there, sitting on top of a piece of luggage out in the sun. And that's where the concern is in that.
Well, that's the company's fault.
And Shell station too. They need to be providing a better shelter, for the people too.
That's not their business.
That's not their business, yeah.
They're leasing it to them. I mean, they
Rock and
entered
hard
into a
place.
deal. I would think there'd be something there.
And I think that's what I was kind of trying to get at is like, I hate to see them, basically we're putting the kibosh on it. It's like you can't be here. And so we're pushing it out of the city completely when we know that there's a need for it. I just wish there was some other, but I understand the concerns and like obviously it's not set up for it. There needs to be more restrooms and all that. From a business model too, from a business person, like the idea of having a standalone business for the amount of people that are taking a bus and all that, I can understand where that's not, especially in today's prices with real estate being what they are in our city. I can understand that not being a feasible model for them, but there has to be a better way of them provide, the companies or the Shell station providing for the service that they've agreed.
Make them turn
they've
it into a
entered
Buc-ee's.
into.
There's plenty of room. Make them turn it into a Buc-ee's and there's plenty of room.
I don't understand how we as a city are just okay with just shutting that service off completely.
But the bus company is causing it, because they
And I
don't want
get
to.
it, but that's why I was like,
Well,
let's
we
put
give
a
an
clause in
ultimatum.
there that says you have to have a dedicated,
And that would be
Right.
not this ordinance. That would be if
the
it.
last one.
Not even really the last one. That'd be the last one wouldn't even happen necessarily. That would have been a different approach to redo the development standards. But then the problem there is the existing one at the Shell station would be grandfathered in at that point. And if they brought that, if you did that, so they would just have to be the bare minimum as opposed to coming up to the standards. And so this, if there is an appetite, I think by council, I think we'll probably, I'll at least put the bug in their ear that if they want to leave the opportunity open for someone in the future, they should probably go and have some design standards if they want to relax the standards at that point.
Yeah, standard
And if that were the
requirements.
case, I mean, and that's where a lot of the times, you know, for those of you who have been on the LPA for a while, you've seen a lot of kind of new paragraphs and stuff being brought forward. You know, I'm thinking of the livery vessel one. There was a scooter ordinance in there, the micromobility devices. We'll bring those things when there's somebody coming in saying, hey, we want to do this. We'll work with them, we'll work with city council, come up with what that common operating picture needs to look like, and then we'll go forth from there with these things. So your typical businesses are not going to be like, oh, you don't allow this, we're not going to be there. They're going to approach us in growth management and be like, hey, look, we really want to come in there, but work with me. And that's what we do. And that's where a lot of these ordinance changes come from that you see is when, you know, the things develop, things change, you know. 10 years ago, we didn't have any scooters or anything like that. You know, the livery vessel thing, just, it wasn't even a thing. So as things change and grow, then that's where we just keep, you know, either modifying or adding to our code.
Do they stop in Destin or on the island or anywhere? Or
They did when I rode as a kid a couple times. They came in through Niceville. They went down Highway 20 from Tallahassee, and then they came down Niceville, and then went to that place over on Perry. And then
Yeah, I mean, I was dropped off here and there at that Perry one.
Nobody ever picked you up.
Nope.
So, and can you explain to, again, like as far as like right now, we're looking at putting a year on grandfathering in. I don't think I followed quite what you were talking about with the other place where the 3 years were given for the scooters in Panama City.
So in Panama
Would it be
City,
a bad idea to say like, we're gonna give them 2 years instead, or?
the reason I put 1 year is because I was worried that the council was going to, if I had 2 years in here originally, if they decide to cut it back, they have to renotice everything. If they want to give these people to the 26th, so tonight y'all can vote, you can make a motion that you'd rather, you'd like this to be amended to say September 10th, 2026 or 2028, or 27, and that'll be a recommendation of the council, and the council can make that change without having to go back through the process again, get renoticed and everything, because that's giving more rights to the public if they were to take property rights away from this owner. And so if I already had 26 or 27 in there, and then they'd have to be renoticed and everything. If they're like, no, we only want to give them 1 year. So right now it's giving them 1 year, but you can give them more time if you want in your motion, your recommended motion today. They can make that change without having to go back and basically come back to y'all.
Well, I still say that the company makes no effort to help their customer.
There's another reason though too, besides the legal reason. Out in Panama City, there were a lot of properties. There were like a lot of scooter rental businesses. And a lot of these businesses were able to prove the first time around when they won an appeal that they bought the land just for that purpose. And they bought the 50 to 100 scooters to have on that for just that purpose. So they had a major economic investment in that single type of business. And so it was not reasonable to give them a short amount of time. Here, there's no discernible difference in the outside of that building if you drive by it. They haven't done anything. I think I've heard they've put a couple benches out. Is that maybe 1 or 2? Yeah. And so that's not the same level of investment. And so the risk is not there too.
So if they came back, if the company comes back and says, oh, we don't want to lose this, like, you know, we'll add bathrooms or a, you know, covered area or whatever, then that could still be open for discussion, or
Of
would
course,
it just be like completely?
Well, they have a process
really
both in
shutting down.
here. If they show up before and make a good case beforehand, the council might table it, you know, and say, go back and work with them completely. They also have the process in here to come in and petition too, and obviously, I don't have a dog in the fight, so that's, I'm also attorney, but I think Tim, the staff side, would want to work with the folks.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. I mean, even if
Yeah.
this was 5 years down the road, 6 months down the road, if somebody truly does show an interest on, hey, look, we want to actually go back to kind of like the Perry model where we're going to have a location for them, we're going to have, ADA compliance with them, we're going to have all the stuff that's would really truly be needed to make this, really viable and safe for people, then absolutely. And that's where several times, that's what I'm saying, so sometimes we'll bring in an ordinance and then, there's some unintended consequences to it. We'll bring another ordinance to change that right back, or to add more rules or more guidance on there, and stuff. So that's where, some of you were around when we did all the livery vessel ordinances and stuff, so we're working on some modification to that now, because, okay, maybe we didn't get it 100% right with the first one, so let's make some changes to it. And so that would absolutely be something if people wanted to actually make an effort with it, then we would absolutely work with them.
Are there any federal or state regulations on how, like to say, an airport requires A, B, or C? Is there anything like that that they would have to follow? I mean, I don't know much about this, but that's what I'm kind of asking.
There are, and the ordinance that'll be going before the council that is not a land use ordinance, so it's not coming through the LPA. There is another ordinance that will actually mandate that they start meeting those standards now, the existing one. And obviously, if they decide to renovate their building and they file a petition or even meet with staff, I think that would be going a long way to the council probably backing off. But I can't speak for the council, but there are, to answer your question directly, there are federal standards that they do have to meet that a gas station does not meet those standards.
Yeah, because I went fishing yesterday. I couldn't imagine being outside in this last couple days heat, for a couple hours waiting for another bus. Couldn't imagine, and on concrete.
So the Shell has no opinion on this, the owners of them, or?
They, I haven't heard anything from them, but I think we're working on trying to set some meetings up with them.
We are, and that's where sometimes these run into problems, because sometimes these locations, you can have a multitude of businesses operating at one location. You've got a food truck there, you've got the Shell station there, you've got a U-Haul there, you've got a bus stop there. The Shell station is a tenant there, so it's not necessarily them that's saying, yes, you can have this bus, it's the property owner and stuff, so that's where, now some of them, I'm sure it's a company owns the Shell station and they're having them rent there, allowing that to happen with there, but a lot of these across around, it's just, there's, it's an owner trying to make money, and I can respect that. But it's not necessarily, and that's where you sometimes run into these problems where you've got, yes, there's water that can be bought inside and some stuff like that, or restrooms, but, some places are very strict on the, restrooms are for their customers only. And I don't have any indication from this Shell station if that's what they're doing or not, but some places do that. And, they could refuse to give somebody a key to the bathroom because, well, you're not a customer. And that's where it runs into those problems is that you've got individual entities working there.
And plus, they clearly aren't set up to have a dozen or 24 people sitting inside their business. It's a kind of small convenience store if you go see it. So everyone has to wait outside, like you were indicating, on these hot days like today.
I agree that the year may be too short, but I also like it because it also forces Greyhound's hand to either come into compliance or just turn the stuff off completely.
And the landowner too, if they decide they want to keep Greyhound there too. Greyhound might say, oh, we'll just move, practically speaking, they might just move, half a mile down the road into Mary Esther or,
And that's their problem.
their problem. But I think more likely we'll probably see a response out of the landowner than Greyhound themselves. So.
All right. If any further discussion?
I'd like to approve the
Second.
1 year.
So Mr. Coates moved and.
Yeah, I'll second.
Ms. Kincaid, I say that's a good story. You should show up because you might have a receptive audience if you have a customer.
What?
They voted.
I think we need better transportation
I voted.
within the city.
Yeah.
Like, has anybody ever ridden the transit bus to Destin and back?
Have you?
Yes.
We have a transit
I wouldn't
bus.
pay $20 to have a cab take me to work. And so I got on the bus, and it was interesting. I don't think I want to do it every day
How long
because
ago
it took
did you-
3 hours to get there.
Was it recently? you did
No.
that? Okay.
No, but it took me 3 hours because they stop, and then they have to let everybody wait to get there, and then you get back on, and then the next bus rolls around, and it was a $2 run, and I thought, well, you know, everybody should try this to prove that we need better bus service here.
Have to go through it once. So.
The Easy Riders
I wish I
expanding.
don't.
They have plans too, so
Yeah,
they do.
yeah, I mean, I know a couple of drivers on there. They're busy all the time. The Easy Rider.
Yeah.
I won't be presenting these to you most of the time. I'll be just giving you advice and poking them. So.
All right, planning supervisor reports,
Nothing.
Is it
board
good?
member reports? No report? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Smells good.